place to be. I'm Vernon, your host. Happy Meal Diet, representing health, happiness, and everything in between. 5 days a week, 8:45 Eastern, 7:45 Central. Bringing a positive, bringing a different perspective, bringing something that you want to talk about that excites you about today, versus some of the negativity. Well, a lot of the reality that is getting some people, in a place. We got to balance it out. It doesn't work if you don't use it. This came up yesterday when I got some feedback brought to my attention that a lot of the things that I speak on are what was it? To the sum of it's a little bit too Pollyanna-ish, and it always makes me laugh when I hear things like that. The kind of the criticisms. And, I take most things with a grain of salt, and I at least consider the perspective. And it brought me back, when I was bringing up a couple of weeks ago about a subject, but it brought me back to this is about a year and a half ago. And, it's an amazing thing how people get into this habit of perpetuating just ridiculousness without any depth or knowledge. And I don't argue with people, I don't waste my energy. 99% of the time, the questions shut people down, especially when you know that they don't know what the heck they're talking about. But let me put this into context. So I'm running a mastermind. And this mastermind, this is for all of my clients that I was working with one on one. I brought them all together, which I thought was this great idea. It still is. I know it's a great idea. These are people who have a business, who have an idea of a business, and they want to understand how to put their day together that makes more sense. I call it profit, produce results, or F it. That's the program I run, and that's what we do. We're going to produce a result. If it's not producing a result, we're effing it. It's all about lining things up, making sure your day is prompted, is like optimized. It works every single time. People are getting great results. 10% increase, in literally a week. We got some people, jumping to the front of the line, making $30,000 and $40,000 more a month. And I'm not saying this to impress you. I'm saying this to impress upon you. People were getting some great results. Brought everybody together in this mastermind. As a collective, because I'm big on group work as well. It's great to silo yourself off or to work individually. I'm big on, do it alone, do it by yourself, just don't do it alone is a big mantra in our group. So we're all together and I'm laughing, I'm joking, I'm talking kind of like this. We're doing a virtual forum and I'm looking on the screen and I'm looking at the screen. I'm just watching the body language. Somebody doing this. And it's one of my guys, obviously. And I'm looking, I'm like, this guy hasn't showed up the last couple of coaching calls, which that's their prerogative. You paid for it. If you don't want to show up, that's on you, because that's not my stuff. That's your stuff. And I know that. I'm very, very, very meticulous about things like that. You're not going to try to flip things on me because that's why my practice is what's your happy, not my happy. I give you the parameters. I'll let you know how to do it. We coach, we get it together. Boom, we celebrate. But I'm watching his body language. Guys have been showing up. And people are talking and, talking about some of their struggles. So they do some, really fun hot seats. Well, I had enough and I'm seeing this and that. And typically I ignore it, but I had a little bug in my butt. Whoop, let me get my autofocus going. Boom. There we go. So I had a little bug in my butt. And so I just asked him, what's up? And let's just call him Matt. I said, Matt, what's going on? He's like, well, you say this and you say that, and I hear this and I hear that, but this stuff doesn't work. What you're saying doesn't work. The way that you optimize things for efficiency and results doesn't work. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking. I just let them talk. But one of the best things you can do is let people talk. People want to be heard, but also people need to hear themselves. I'm not judging someone. I recognize where people are. That's why I don't argue. This is just a representation of where they are. And as I stated earlier, I don't argue with people. So he's bringing a fury. He's bringing a heat. And we got an open forum. Cuss if you want. Just keep it respectful. You don't cuss at me, but you can cuss. You're not going to say F you, but you can say F how this is going. Just to give you an example, I'm big on respect. And I'm sitting there and, he's dropping explicatives, and we're all just kind of like sitting there and everyone's like, oh God, who's this guy talking to? And so I just asked him, very clearly after he finished his rant, and I asked him, what step did you get stuck on? And he looks at me, he's like, what do you mean? What step did I get stuck on? If you're telling me something doesn't work, I want to know where in the process did you fall off? Where in the process did it get fuzzy? Where did things not align with how you were setting your life up, day up, week up, month up, business up? And, I was making this, a learning opportunity. He's like, whoa. And then I said, wait, let me just ask you a better question. Where do you expect this conversation to go when you come at me like this? And then he just gets quiet. He doesn't say anything, because remember, I don't argue because most things aren't arguments. Some things are just, an expression of where they are, as I said. Sometimes people are more so talking about some things that have nothing to do with you. And I'm sitting there thinking all these things. And then he said, well, it's not you, it's the process. So great. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the process. I understand, making sure we're on the same path. I said, does that make sense? He said, yes. And I said, again, what step did you lose, your traction on? Where did things go wrong? And so now I'm seeing people leaning in more because I repeated it. And, he just flat out admitted after a few more questions. I said, so what did you do specifically? Specifically, what did you do and where did I get it wrong? Because if someone's going to bring an argument to you, you need to be very specific. You're not going to speak and somewhat platitudes. This doesn't work. That doesn't tell me what to do, and that doesn't give me a magnifying glass where we need to focus. I'm human. I make mistakes. But I'm pretty certain if we got 11 people, additional people in this room who are getting results in a direction that's got them excited to be together on a Tuesday morning, some of these people have 9 to 5 jobs and they're all here. That's not really representative of what you're saying. And that makes you in the minority, which means I'm not going to pay much attention to it, but I'm going to give it at least a little bit of attention. Because again, I could be wrong. And what eventually came out, again, after the questions are very revealing. They're not confrontational. It makes you think. And that's where the phrase came from today. It doesn't work if you don't use it. Many times there's so many persons who can get critical and judgmental about what's wrong. This isn't about my coaching program. This is just about what people are complaining about and what doesn't work for them and how people kind of get caught up into this. A lot of those things, they're not following the process. They're not. People will say, oh, well, running your program doesn't work. Oh, Happy Meals doesn't work. Are you following it? Beyond a shadow of a doubt, are you truly following it? Or are you having your best attempts to follow it? And I'm talking to people also about how you can handle criticism. People are not going to always be 100% in favor of what you have to say, but you have to be able to stand up for the things that are to be true. Even if it doesn't make any sense, even if I could have been wrong, and I'm happy to be wrong. I want to be wrong. I'm always wanting to grow. And I'm willing to stand in that because you know what? I didn't get here without making a lot of mistakes. And I'm always open to how the process can be better. I'm always open to how things can be more smooth and succinct. But I want most people to sit back and think about these things today, that some of the criticisms that you might be getting from your job, some of the criticism you might be getting from some interviewers saying that you could be, you don't listen very well, you're hard to communicate with. You have got to consider the source beyond anything, because what people will say to you can tear you down. It could hurt you depending on where you are in your journey, in your environment. Depending on what you are going through that day, you can be so more apt to take in some sort of emotional injury. But you need to question the source. Do not ridicule. Do not sit back and diminish, but question, where did you get your information from? How closely did you follow? Because that's a way of getting you in the mud. And you cannot, from a place of being in the mud, sit back and tell someone, hey, what's going on here? What's happening? Why? Because your vision is blurry with all the caca that's on your face. You got to stand above it. And how you stand above it is 1, strong resolve. 2, ask the innocent questions. But consider the source before you take it as a perspective. Because if that had been going back with my original, framing here, if I've been earlier in my journey, I was not as confident as I am about this. I wasn't as sure as I am about the things I am now. That could have bothered me. Sure, you could say, well, you should, how people believe now. Well, who cares? You should let that go. Believe in yourself. Well, listen, if the results don't match, if the end game isn't looking like what it should, that means you need to make some adjustments. So don't go and be so focused and overly confident that you're not getting that result. So that's why I'm always open to at least hearing a perspective, but I do not take it in. That's a choice. And the questions create a boundary for what I've received and what you're going to receive. Consider perspective on so many things before you take it as a criticism, as you take it for what's wrong with you. You know, and the cool thing about that was, you know, back to that story, when I'm sitting there talking with him, I made it into a big joke. You know, I made this big joke about following a cake recipe, and you know, you get step 2 and you get to step 10 and wonder why the cake doesn't get ready. Well, I'm telling you now, there's a reason why you're not a wedding cake maker, because you're skipping steps and getting upset. And, you know, of course, the room's laughing. He ends up like doing a little chuckle. And we flipped it around. I told him exactly what to do, but that's my point. He was not talking to me. He was frustrated. When people get lost sometimes in life, when people get stressed, when life just shows them to be life, it will rob people of their personalities. It will rob people of just their sensibilities to even be able to converse. That's not me. That's them. And I give people a nice safe space where they can be themselves. I'm not going to tear someone down, but I'm not going to indulge in anything that's not going to build me up though. There's a big difference. Go out there, consider the perspective, but remember, if it doesn't work, I mean, if you don't use it, it doesn't work. If something's not working for you right now, go back, fine tune, make sure you're doing everything that you need to do. I'm not saying that that will solve it, but before you bring it to someone's attention, make sure that it's done properly. Make sure you're doing it the way it needs to be done. I tell my son this all the time. I want to make sure your room looks good. I want to make sure this, and the third. That's all I'm asking. Just make sure you're doing it right before you come to me and tell me what's wrong. It's something that adults need to remember as well. Go out there, be happy, be healthy. Before you consider a perspective that could tear you down, make sure that it's one that is founded in truths. Make sure it's one that is founded in follow through, definitely, but also bridge the gap versus creating an enemy. You can make a great friend out of someone. This guy's still one of my clients now. Why? Because it's all about how you nurture someone. It's all about how you take care of someone. It's all about how you respond, not react. Go out there, be happy and healthy. I'm going to see you all tomorrow. Wrapping this